Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people create freedom in their life through success in tech sales and the pursuit of personal growth. And one thing I'm excited to do now on the channel is to start to interview folks like Chandler Gull, who we have here, that are former athletes and current entrepreneurs that saw the value in tech sales and broke in to illuminate, why they broke into tech sales, how they did it, what the reality of the job is like, for example, in an SDR or BDR role, and where they're looking to take it. And that's what we're going to do today, talking with Chandler. So let's just dig right into it. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe before we move forward for weekly sales and personal growth hacks that you can chew on like snacks, shameless plug. But we're bringing value every week with folks like Chandler. So Chandler, could we start with your journey as a college athlete and entrepreneur, and then talk about how you actually heard about tech sales in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I played college soccer. I only played for a year. I struggled with a couple injuries and some life transitions, and I soon realized that I needed to.
Oh, you're good.
Do you want me to? Do you want to pause, or are we live?
Oh, we're good. We're live, and this makes for a great moment. I actually, just for some comedic relief, I interviewed a famous sales author, Matt Dixon. He wrote the most influential sales book of our time, really, and I'm not exaggerating. It's called The Challenger Sale. And we had like multiple times where the video cut out for a minute.
Okay, yeah.
We're good. Let's keep flowing with it. And I have cars passing by on my end too. But yeah, what was your journey again? You were saying you had some injuries and changes, but yeah, what was that evolution into entrepreneurship and then tech sales?
Well, I always wanted to, I was a teenager and I wanted to be an entrepreneur someday. But it wasn't until I was transitioning out of playing sports competitively that I actually started to pursue what I was going to do afterwards. I'd actually been to a career counselor when I was 18, a psychologist that told me that I should go into sales based on all the surveys and information that she put together in her entire career. I always had that in the back of my mind. But I tried a bunch of different things.
So my question is, what were the qualities that you demonstrated? Did she tell you that made her think that was a good fit for you? Because that might be helpful to the audience to think about themselves. Do you remember?
Yeah. I mean, I can only guess that. I mean, I went through pages of questions, and interviews with her. So it was super extensive, but I can't say that like athletes do make great entrepreneurs and they make great salespeople. I come from playing soccer. I was naturally a goal scorer. So when you're in sales, you got to score. And so that's an easy game to kind of translate into that space. And same thing with, being an entrepreneur, you got to score. You have to be great working within a team, typically, unless you're, in an individual sport. As an athlete, athletes are really hard workers. They have incredible time management skills, great networking abilities, so many characteristics that make them, kind of give them the upper hand, give them the edge to be successful in whatever space, but specifically entrepreneurship and definitely sales.
Oh, I was muted. So what made you aware of the opportunity of tech sales? Was it like some people you knew that showed you what was possible? You're like, wow, these guys are killing it. Like how did you actually become aware of the opportunity?
Well, so the introduction to tech sales was with a couple people that I knew. And this is actually before, I knew you at this time, but I didn't know that you were actually in the space, which was interesting enough. I wish I would have known that. I probably would have gotten started in the space earlier, but, coming out of COVID, a lot of, I had a friend, a couple of friends that I knew that were in the space, and they were working remotely and making really good money in tech sales. And COVID transitioned that, and it for most of them it didn't go back. So the lifestyle that I was being told, the balance in combination with the money you could make, it was just like I had one friend, he basically said, like it would take a lot for him to like switch off this path. And it was, it was a really good friend that I trusted, and he told me that, and just the way that he was living, how happy he was, I was like, all right, I really got to consider this. And there's medical sales you can do really well, or pharmaceutical sales, but tech specifically, I felt like was the best match for me, what I wanted to do.
And so aside from the ability to make a lot of money and to ultimately create freedom, which personally I evangelize in this channel, or to anyone I talk to, money is just a tool to create freedom, experiences, support passions and great causes. And it's not the end game, but sales helps you get there. And beside those factors and that flexibility, what drew you to tech sales in particular? Was it the dynamic nature of the industry? Like what specifically drew you?
Yeah, I think I definitely wanted to learn more. I work in a startup now, so I'm getting to experience firsthand their scale of growth. Going through a crowdfunding process, approaching a Series A, funding round, and being able to learn and be a part of that was really big for me. I actually, I know you work for really large enterprises. It was actually my goal to work within a smaller enterprise that, just by essentially being involved in that space and going through that journey, would create a lot of upward opportunity. I'm sure you wouldn't complain if you were an early employee at one of these giants now. If you started with them 30 years ago and you were one of the earlier employees, you get stock options, stuff like that. And it's just a really cool journey to be able to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, everyone who started at Google, the OGs, are all multimillionaires, right? So that's just how it goes. The upside is so huge. And so you hit on a good thing. And it's like you have trade-offs for when I talk to people who want to break into tech sales. You can do the big company, which I actually started with and I loved, right? I went to Oracle. They have great training. You have a support system. You have more security for sure, and you can use it as a launch point to go to startups and other companies, but you are giving up the huge upside of going to a startup where you could move up so fast, you get equity, and what if you go public and it's just a transformational wealth event? And so that's a key decision that folks have to make when they're deciding to break in. Do they want the big company that's a little more comfortable with more training and support, or the startup with such a high upside but more risk? What was your thinking on making that decision? I'm just assuming you're entrepreneurial and you already have started your company MindPower, which is making a huge impact and continuing to grow, which is amazing. Maybe we should talk about it a bit, but is that why you chose the startup route? You just have a high risk tolerance and you just think with a growth mindset. What was that criteria for you?
I think understanding myself and my personality, I want to be able to be involved more and bring, ideas to the table that can be potentially applied. I've got a skill set that's pretty versatile. So it's nice to be able to, bring ideas and make more of an impact. In a startup, if you get a deal or you make something happen, like that's a bigger impact than if you're at a large corporation. It seems a lot smaller. So there's a bigger opportunity to make an impact there. And I want to say, Chris, one of the things that really pulled me into sales was, being an entrepreneur. I was like, okay, the number one thing that I need to be really good at, and I don't care how long it takes, I don't, is be great at sales. If you want to be successful in business, you have to either be very technically gifted, either a software developer or something like that to create that kind of product, or be very gifted in, business development. And that was a skill that I thought that I was lacking a little bit amongst others. So I really just wanted to focus in on that. And it's really the number one most important thing in business. You can be an expert marketer and that'll take you, great places. You could be an expert in operations, but at the end of the day, if you can sell, you're always going to have value somewhere. And that's my second point actually is, security. I know right now, like there is heavy talks of recessions, and I think 9 out of 10 people are going to agree that we are in a recession. But the tech company layoffs, for example, they're not necessarily laying off hundreds of salespeople. They need their salespeople more than anything. They may be laying off like their recruiters because they're not hiring more. Right? That's what a lot of companies are doing. They're laying off recruiters kind of first, because if they're slowing their hiring process or kind of stalling it, they don't need those people, but you need salespeople. If every company does. So just overall value, if you're great at sales, you'll always have a home somewhere. And being through 2020 is the job market I hopped into basically right when I got done with college, and it was not a friendly market. It was terrible. And we're kind of approaching a struggling, job market, I think, here in the future as well. There's a lot of layoffs happening. some give and take, but if you can sell, that's a skill that has the most value.
It is such a good asset. You really illuminated a couple great points. Number one being that that skill is something you take with you your whole life. If you want to sell great ideas, it's not a best writing author, it's a best selling author. I say that all the time. It's actually from Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yep.
You probably know that book on wealth building. And Rob Kiyosaki, the author, talks about sales and copywriting to be the most important skills you can develop for wealth building. And copywriting being, writing sales copy, online material, for example, that gets you to click and buy something. And I'd argue even writing a good cold email, it's like a sales copy. You're getting someone to take the meeting. So these skills are so important. What if you need to reach out to someone to get funding and capital to start your startup or continue its growth and extend your cash runway, or just even getting your foot in the door? And we need to talk about that next, how you got your foot in the door in tech. By networking and developing that skill, you can get a warm intro into a company and increase your chances, right? So there's so many ways to leverage sales as a skill, especially as an entrepreneur and CEO. And like you said, sales drives the growth of a business. I think it's the largest expense that a business has in general. And that's why salespeople get paid so much. And you do reduce risk, because whether it's like, say your company, it's not working out, you can, if you're a good seller, you can find another company where you probably can make even more money, negotiate a higher base salary and on target earnings. And a lot of people nowadays, as a seller, because you're so needed with your skill set, can bounce around and keep moving up, man. So anyways, a long-winded way of, really validating what you're saying. And it's great to hear from you, your perspective on that. I wanted to transition now to how you got your foot in the door in tech sales at your current company. What was that process? What was that journey like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started into looking into tech sales specifically almost a year ago now, because I was in an operations focused role, and I realized, the path through, tiers of management can take longer by comparison. Like if you want to make a lot of money, you can start with no experience going into sales and learn and become great at it, or you could study for 4 years, 8 years to learn how to, be an engineer, or be a computer scientist or software developer, or you could just be great at sales, and in the operations role, it felt like there was a lot of, and that was a large corporation. It felt like there was not a lot of upward movement. It takes time for people to move in tiers of management to be able to scale up. But in sales, you kind of create your own path a little bit, depending on the company. And if you're not in a great company in sales, like you said just now, you can find another company and increase your salary, get a nice bump, negotiate offers against each other, until you find what works.
Yeah, it's cool to be that, you're in a career, we're in a career, or anyone out there in tech sales in a career where your level of effort can increase your pay. It's related. Right. That's pretty special. It's very motivating, and your success is a reflection, or your pay is actually a reflection of your impact.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
That's a big part of it too, Chris, that I didn't mention, is you control kind of through your production, you control what you get, right? Which I appreciate and I like. It's tough if you're just in a non-sales role, for example, which most sales roles are a base salary and some sort of commission structure package. But, an operations role, for example, or a marketing role is probably going to be more so just a base salary. So you're not getting rewarded for the production. And I found in the role that I was in operations is I was producing a ton. And to the point where I could say, like, here, these are the tangibles for my production. Can I get a pay raise here, or we set up a kind of structure here? But no, you're not in a sales role, so it's not part of that, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And one thing that you could probably validate, we kind of talked about this, is in tech sales, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world or have a crazy degree. You don't have to study for years, and you can make 6 figures in your first year within 2 years. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? Like, based on what you've seen now being in the industry.
Yeah, 100% correct. Like I said, you could study something for a long time to make a decent salary, or you could you could literally be without a college degree and find a good opportunity if a company would let you or allow that. And there are sales opportunities, not necessarily in tech. There's a lot of sales opportunities and experience you can gain without that experience. You know, if you were 19 and you went to start a sales job, you could become a great salesman in 2-3 years, and then, you know, be able to find your way. And I know people that didn't even really care about college because they were in a sales path in like solar. So I know this guy in solar, making like $500,000 a year. And I didn't even know salespeople made that much money, you know?
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's not just tech, but tech for me, you know, it's a dynamic field, it's evolving. And, you know, so whether it's solar or pharmaceuticals is also a great place to be. One thing I love about tech though is, like, let's say you care about healthcare, there are health tech companies, or education, there are ed tech companies. So you can, or fintech, if you care about crypto. So tech has a lot of flexibility based on your interest to solve like, or problems that are actually pretty impactful and meaningful. And just to finish the thought, you know, I'm reading a book, How Will You Measure Your Life? And it's by a Harvard professor that actually passed away. I think his last name's Christensen, I'm forgetting. And he said one of the most important factors for choosing your career is having a meaningful impact. Now, I don't know. I don't want to assume in your current role you're feeling that, but what are your thoughts on that aspect of work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it before, but like working in a small company, if you make a sale or you land a big deal, that's a tremendous impact to a company that's growing, especially through like a funding phase. So like in my current role, for example, if anybody makes a sale or gets a deal, like it's a big deal. You know, that's forward growth that then is turned and shown to investors for progression of the company, which then in turn builds everybody together. And maybe at a bigger company, you know, you do have like sales managers, you have teams, but the overall impact is not going to be felt as much, you know? So I feel like working within a startup, it's very much a team cohesive effort. You know, if no matter what it takes, you know, if you need to have, you know, hey, like have somebody in your team, like, hey, can you call this person real quick and get, you know, just another touch point from a different perspective that it's not just me. They're glad to do it. That's the kind of team effort that I've noticed within a startup.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what I'm experiencing now. I'm 7 years in. I did Oracle, did Google, and Google's a little more like a big company that still has a startup mindset. And especially Google Cloud is like a startup within Google. But now my current company, we're like a Series D, so we're late stage, but I get what you're saying. And I love it, that ability to make an impact. And that's meaningful. And that's what matters more than money or status, but you just so happen to make good money and eventually move up as well. So one question I had is how did you tactically land this role that you're in? Like, was it through a warm introduction or was it flat? Can you walk through the process? Because people out there are trying to figure out, like, how do I actually land the job? Like, what did it look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, so it was a relatively traditional application process for me. You know, that itself is a sale. You know, it feels like sales trying to, you know, line up a job. It's a ton of outreach, a ton of applications, a lot of interviews. You know, you're selling yourself. So I was in a position that was nice where I was able to leverage different offers against each other and kind of accumulate offers over the span of a couple months before I accepted the offer that I did. And that was nice. And I mentioned that, like, I was in the job market coming out of school that was kind of went straight into COVID. I actually switched careers because I used to be a personal trainer. And there was not that many options. You know, I sent out probably more applications than I did in this round, but there was not good opportunities out there. You know, I was getting people that wanted me to come work for them off of commission-based sales opportunities, for example, because companies just weren't hiring in the summer of 2020. They really weren't. It wasn't until that fall where it started to slowly pick up a little bit, and companies weren't paying as much either. So, yeah, the process into this role was pretty traditional. You know, I did a lot of work on LinkedIn. I know you're big on LinkedIn. It's a great place to really build a resume. When somebody looks at your LinkedIn and your history, your resume is right there for them. You can obviously give and submit your resume. But I would recommend for anybody to definitely utilize LinkedIn, but utilize as many platforms as possible. Apply on Glassdoor, have an account set up there. Apply on Indeed, have an account set up there. That way you have these different platforms, these different recruitment softwares that are helping you to get your foot in the door. And different companies recruit specifically on different spaces. I would say LinkedIn's the number one place to go, but you give yourself more options by having accounts on different platforms like that.
How long were you in this process of hunting for jobs, now working on LinkedIn and leveraging Glassdoor? And obviously it's amazing that you were in a position that not many are in, to have different offers and leverage it against themselves. So you're a golden child here of how you should approach this. But how long was that process to end up from first application or even starting to prepare for applications to landing the job that you?
Yeah, I would say for me, somewhere between 2.5 to 3 months. And I would actually, recommend for anybody understanding that they're going into a process, give yourself 3 months to build multiple versions of a resume. Get it checked. If I were to build another one right now, I'd say, hey, Chris, can you look at my resume? Maybe you've got some insight that you would like to add from your experience. Have other people look at your resume. That might take a couple weeks to really get something that starts to get some traction. And then, put out hundreds of applications. It's going to take a while for those recruiters to start to reach out and get in touch with you. And then I would say the average interview process is, the fastest interview process I would say would be maybe 3 weeks. But, you got to line these interviews. You got 3 or 4 interviews. You might line up 1 per week. So you got to give yourself, 3 to 4 months. So if you were coming out of college, for example, start that process going into your last semester so that you can have something lined up right when you're done with school.
So how did you prepare for your interviews? Did you spend like weeks before? Or did you just take it as it came? Like, how did you prepare?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like me, Chris, I'm just kind of like a show up and go kind of guy. I prepared for my interviews by doing the necessary background research on the company so that I knew my material, knew my knowledge. Because the last thing you want to do is get into an interview and make it obvious that you don't even know what this company is all about. You want to show them how interested you are by understanding what they do. So that's something that, as far as preparation, that I did. In terms of like interview question prep, just getting some general ideas of interview questions, but you can't prepare to know exactly what they're going to say. There's some standard interview questions that they're going to ask you. But in reality, you gotta just be ready for everything, and then take each interview as a learned lesson. I've had bad interviews and great interviews. And I'd say I learned more from the bad interviews to take forward than the ones that went great.
Yeah, I totally relate. At Oracle, when I was looking to get my first promotion, there were a couple business units I could go into, from the SDR or BDR role to the account executive role. And I went for one and I failed miserably. And then I learned that and actually landed a job that was even better, where I crushed it, taking everything I learned from failure. So I agree, man. It's all a part of the process. And it's the same in sales, right? Because we'll get rejected. We'll have deals that won't work out, that we might lose, but then we get better and better and iterate to greatness. So one thing I wanted to ask as we round out the theme of like the interviews and what they look like, or what are some of the common questions based on what you saw that people have to be ready to answer? Just some of those standard ones.
I mean, I would say something unique to tech, or maybe not unique to tech, maybe, but it is not necessarily like a first interview type of question, but getting asked to prepare presentation materials on your goals and objectives within the company, or do a live pitch is very common in sales. Is at some point in an interview, you're probably going to have to do a live pitch. You may prepare materials on a topic that the interviewer has given you, or something that you can choose. That's very common. Maybe doing a pitch or presentation on how you would prospect or reach out to an account. What would be your method here? What would your email or your call sound like? Those type of things. So I'd say sales interviews are more like a tryout. You can't really try out for an operations role because you have to train for it, but you can try out for a sales role. So if you were to prepare in some way, I'd say the best way to prepare is just through experience and practice. Like you said, like you had a terrible interview before, but you learned from it.
Yes.
And that's the only thing, it's not, I think people don't really understand as much that, if you have one exam, like you're in school and you have a final exam and it's huge and that's pass or fail, there's a ton of pressure on it. But in reality, life is not going to be like that. It's not a do or die in any situation, but it's like you're going to be tested. So you might as well fail fast and fail early. If you could take the final exam in the first week and then take it again in the second week, you're going to do way better, So sales has to have a mindset of that. You have to be used to getting rejected. People are scared of that. And I would say that happens in interviews for sure.
Yeah, it happens in the job. It happens in life. And I think there's no failure unless you don't try. It's all learning and growth comes from it, and I was just going to say, to finish off, it sounds like you're going to say something, but I've learned through sales to learn through doing. In sales, you learn through doing on the job and failing, and then getting better, and through mentors who know how to do it. And the same with entrepreneurship. But anyways, you were about to say something. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you really don't know or really feel what it's like to win unless you've lost. So give yourself the chance to lose. Obviously, don't try to lose, try to win, but be okay with it when you do lose. I preach a lot of mindset stuff with people, and I always say, mindset's two things. It's how you approach doing things, and it's also, more importantly, how you react. That's kind of the two sides to mindset. And if you have a great mindset, a growth-oriented mindset, you're going to succeed in anything, especially sales.
Well, there's a great dose of motivation for the audience here, whether you're in sales or just for your broader life, whatever you're trying to do. Embrace a growth mindset, not just how you approach things, as you're saying, but how do you respond. And Viktor Frankl, his book, Man's Search for Meaning, survived the concentration camps. He said the last of the human freedoms is our ability to choose our response and our perspective. Maybe that's a paraphrase. I don't know its exact words, but it's exactly what you're saying. So very wise. As we round out this conversation, and again, I want to thank you for your time because it's been very valuable and illuminates the reality of what it's like to break into sales and how to really be successful in doing so. I want to finish up with a couple things. One is, what does your day-to-day actually look like now? What are you doing? And just what's the reality of the job?
Number one is I live a life that is much different than I was able to before. I work remotely, so that's kind of, set the stage. I work remotely. I work from home, so you can picture the kind of environment that I could work in. My day-to-day schedule, kind of how I like to utilize my day is heavy morning outreach. So morning outreach, a lot of cold calls, a lot of emails, and then usually team meetings. So there's usually one or two team meetings during the morning or mid-morning. And that's in any sales role that I've ever had. That's normal. Touch base with your team, which would be virtually for me, see where everybody's at, kind of set the stage for the rest of your day. And then at that point, I use my lunchtime because I kind of work through lunch. I'll get some food, but then I'll spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn doing some kind of outreach on LinkedIn, because that's a good kind of tertiary, third approach in addition to emails and calls. And then afternoons is primarily focused on, if I have a scheduled meeting or a demo, that's when I would do that. And I actually listened, to your, this is your advice that you gave as a goal in one of your videos, is 1 hour of cold calls or 2 30-minute meetings as an objective. So that's kind of what my afternoon would in theory look like. So if I have a 15-30-minute, discovery call, or second or third call, or an hour, 45-minute hour demo, that would take up, my time in the afternoon. If not, then it's, going to be cold call focused pretty much. And then, closing out the day is preparing for the next day, which might include, prospecting accounts, preparing for the next day, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a key thing at the end of the day, to prepare for the next day. That's huge. That's really a high performer thing to do right there.
If you have to work on a Saturday or Sunday to be ready for Monday, it's worth it. It's
totally worth it, man. It's all about what are you willing to sacrifice in the short term for long-term gain and freedom. Right. Because eventually in old age, we'll look back and be like, man, look what we built. look at this freedom, man, for us, for our family, hopefully retire early and have some a good nest egg. So it all adds up, man. So I love that. And I was curious, what are the biggest, the things you love most about the job? And we're talking about now that you're actually in it based on a reality of what it's like. What do you love most? And what are things that are kind of annoying, or some, just being realistic with the audience? Like, what are some of the challenges?
Yeah, I would say things that I love most is it's an autonomous role. Sales is performance based. It's not based upon your presence. It's based upon you showing up and producing. So that gives some like freedom. If you're doing great and you're in your sales role, like hitting your KPIs or exceeding them, you're good. You're not going to have to worry about someone worrying about your attendance, for example. So it can be kind of freeing, and you get to choose a little bit of your own schedule and what you do. I would also say favorite part of the life is, it's flexible. If I want to go see friends, stay with them for a week, or go visit family for a week, I can do either, and I can still work while I'm doing that. In past roles, it was an arm and a leg just to get one day off, which I spent on travel, and then I'd spend one day actually with my family and then fly back. So sales, if you work remotely, gives you that opportunity. And I'd say, any salesperson would say this, rejection's usually not fun. Some rejection is worse than others. You never hate, or you never want to have a conversation with somebody where, it just doesn't go well, but that happens, and it's good for, salespeople to understand that if that's the worst of it, it's not your fault. That's what I had to get used to is it is not always me. Maybe that person was having a bad day and I just caught them at the wrong time. And I would say, the rejection is probably the worst part of sales. So I don't know I would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'd say that's the worst. And one thing I've learned is that sales helps us create a distinction between our value, which is intrinsic. We're born a 10 out of 10, whole and complete, and it doesn't change in relation to our performance. And when we see ourselves as a 10 out of 10, even if we perform like a 5 one day, the next day our performance rises to the level of our beliefs and we'll perform like a 10. Now, if we perform like a 10 and we think we're a 5 out of 10, then we might perform like a 10, or you get the point. We think we're 5 out of 10, we perform like a 10. We might think, oh, well, I'm actually really a 5 out of 10. That's what I believe. So the next day the performance goes down. So it takes time to work on our beliefs. And I can tell you have very healthy beliefs and confidence, but I think sales develops that. And over time, you're forced to learn to make that distinction, but it does still sting, doesn't it? Like we're human, right? And the other thing, thanks for asking my perspective. Another thing that's kind of annoying with sales is the reporting component, or logging in Salesforce. It's actually so helpful, but you have to log your activities. So I'd rather just make more calls and action. But it's like, even I have opportunities from this week on deals where I know the progress I'm making, but you need to report it accurately so leadership has a view. And it takes time. I'd rather be doing more emails. Do you know what I'm saying? Or like,
yeah. The kind of the admin stuff and the tracking can take time that you'd rather spend towards, building a new, connection or calling a new lead. So I definitely agree there. It can be time consuming and it can be annoying. Actually, I think Salesforce is a little bit tougher in terms of like logging. I've used a couple of different, platforms. Like right now I use HubSpot in the day-to-day, and I actually really love that platform.
Yeah.
So I think the software that a company uses as well for their sales can make that a little better or a little bit worse.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I will say shout out to HubSpot for the great content they put out, like top sales books. So anyone out there looking to prepare for breaking in and to boost their confidence on how to succeed in tech sales, especially as a BDR, SDR, or you're in the role and you want to up your skills, like check out HubSpot. They have great articles, follow them on LinkedIn. And so I was wondering, Chandler, are there any resources beyond HubSpot that you recommend to folks that you've used in your day-to-day?
Yeah, I was gonna say, this isn't a sponsorship, let your viewers know this, this is not a sponsored deal with HubSpot, but you can get email lists, email templates on HubSpot. You can get business plan templates on HubSpot, whether it's like a marketing plan or an operations plan, which that is what I would recommend for you. HubSpot also has an entire academy and this is all free, by the way, like everything is free on HubSpot, and HubSpot's CRM actually is free as well. They do have their paid tools, but if you wanted to, for a business, for example, if you wanted to open up a account with HubSpot, you can use their CRM for free as well. So they give an infinite amount of value kind of upfront in advance, which is the best sale of all time, is just give first and give freely, and build the customer kind of, just build loyalty through doing good. So definitely HubSpot has done really well there. But yeah, email, I would say email, if anything, their email templates are great to look at, because they also have so much data through all their customers and all their experience to be able to like, hey, like this email versus this email has higher open rates. So the type of stuff that they can give in terms of that is very accurate, and it's really positive, and it's free.
Yeah, use the subject line. This is how long your email should be, right? Things like that. It's super helpful. You should send your emails at this time of day, on this day of the week. They have all these statistics, and I even use their signature block. You can create a cool signature block, and I'm pretty sure I use it. And you can put your picture and all these cool links. So great advice on checking that out. Yep. And the final question for today is, how are you envisioning using tech sales to create more freedom in your life? Because you're a dreamer, you're already running MindPower Foundation and an entrepreneur, and you're doing tech sales. How is this contributing to your broader vision for your life?
Yeah, I think, the overall goal for me in my life is, financial freedom. It's freedom and flexibility of time. So ideally, I do have a ton of freedom already. I've been able to travel to, I think I told you, like I've gone to 4 states that I've never been to in the last 10 months, just because of kind of the nature of work. So the flexibility to do things that you wouldn't be able to prior is there. And then on top of that, scaling my freedom is just making more money and then investing. I'm big into investing. So the more I can make, I can start to buy time. I can start to scale other businesses, and I can invest in passive sources. It's actually, there's a big perspective, like, okay, like, do you go like the corporate route, or you try to like start a business, right? But if you can make a lot of money in any role, you can invest and buy a business, or you could invest and start a business, on the side, but you can have money to be able to funnel and fund it, to be able to take that business to a place that you might not have been able to take if you just focused on it. And, you're eating like, you're just eating rice like every single day because you don't have any money. So
that's such a good strategy these days. I hear about it more and more, that having a job that is a foundation where you make money. And for example, some actors and actresses might wait tables, and you probably could make really good money. Like where I'm from, Naples, Florida, you can make great money with tips, but you're working crazy hours. What about using tech sales, that wave, I call it a wave, but that foundation to make money, but you get really efficient, and you could work 20 to 40 hours a week and crush it because it's based on outcomes. You're flexible, and you use that to fund your side hustles and passions that eventually become a full-time thing, so go ahead. Yeah. I just feel like it's a good strategy,
I mean, it's a good strategy because you've done it and you've lived it. And so you're speaking from experience. And I would also say, like, from my experience, like it's an amazing strategy. Like, it's a great option. I'd say it's the best option for somebody, unless their personality doesn't really fit it.
Yeah.
If your personality doesn't fit sales at all, it's going to be tough, but you can also like learn and get used to it,
Yeah.
Definitely recommend people trying it for sure. Do an internship or something.
It's a trainable skill, and it demands you develop character. So even if it's not a perfect fit, you'll grow from it. And like maybe if you're super analytical, you're terrified of talking to people and rejection, and you're just so bored by the idea of like calls and the nature of the job, then okay. But if you give it a shot, I mean, gosh, I encourage people to give it a shot, because you might find you love it. And if anything, you will grow from it. And you know what I'm saying? So, dude, what a great conversation, by the way. And I got a lot out of it. I learned some things. I also feel like some things I've been thinking about have been validated. And I'm sure the audience has learned a lot about, again, what it takes to break in, why you'd break in, and how you can use tech sales to create freedom in your life. Any other final thoughts from your perspective? Any take home inspiring message? Because you're also pretty motivational beyond the just purely tech sales.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have anything, crazy motivational for you, but I would say like it's really important in sales to have good mentors, whether it's in the company that you work for, or it's even something as simple as like watching the videos on your channel or somebody else's, reading because you've done a lot of interviews with very successful salespeople, so read their books, listen to the content that they've said, take their advice, and accelerate your learning curve. For sales, I would say that is huge. Having a mentor in the world of business or in any career path is kind of an absolute must, I think. So definitely find a mentor, get access and utilize the knowledge that's kind of out there and available.
That's a great note to end on. Really sound advice, Chandler. And folks, if you want to connect with Chandler, I'm going to link his LinkedIn and Instagram. I encourage you to connect with him. He's a pretty inspiring guy. Again, running MindPower Foundation, making a difference in the mental health space for athletes, as well as now crushing in tech sales. There's a lot you could learn from him. And I encourage you to not be afraid to network and even ask him about his path to success and just build that relationship. And of course, reach out to me too. You can find me on LinkedIn at Chris Bussing. And speaking of mentors, I do have a mentorship program on breaking into tech sales, transforming your LinkedIn, your resume. Chandler, you're right. Like LinkedIn's huge, by the way. Providing some coaching on the interview process, standard questions, as well as getting tailored with specific companies. Like I've got connections at Dell, Oracle, Salesforce, other companies. So if anyone wants to pursue that opportunity, send me a message on LinkedIn, send me an email at chrisbussingchannel@gmail.com, and we can have an exploratory conversation and at least have an open line of communication around that. So, and yeah, the other call to action, of course, is make sure to subscribe to the channel. As I said, my cheesy line, subscribe for weekly sales and personal growth hacks that you can chew on like snacks. All right, guys, Chandler, thanks again. And to all you out there, happy selling and happy living.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers.